Welcome to the Stoic Responder Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Healy. As a special agent who spent more than 15 years conducting large-scale fraud, money laundering, and public corruption investigations, Stoic philosophy provided a mindset edge that became the foundation of my professional success. My mission today is to share those same ancient mindset lessons with you so that you can turn obstacles into opportunities and adversity into advantage. Time to muster up.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Indispensable Man podcast. This is episode 40. I cannot believe we've done 40 episodes already, but I suppose when you do 4 a week, it happens. They pile up quicker, huh? And it's actually more than 40 because prior to the Stoic Responder, on the same exact, if you just keep scrolling back, there's a whole different podcast that talked about a lot of these same lessons, but it was different branding. I did a lot more interviews on that podcast. They were longer episodes and did over 200 episodes of that podcast prior to rebranding it as the Stoic Responder. So we're just a train that keeps on moving down the tracks, and we're just trying to provide some value for you at the Stoic Responder. Real quick, because I sometimes forget to do this at the end of episodes, if you do want to support this podcast and you want to get this in the most easy and accessible way, head on over to Substack. Check out the stoicresponder.substack.com. It's completely free. It's where I host all of my writing and where I host the podcast. So if you want to get these episodes delivered directly to your email box so that at 7 a.m., 4 times a week, this is going to show up in your email, 7 a.m. Central Time, I believe. It's going to show up in your email, and you are going to be able to, if you're driving to work, if you're driving home from work, just open your email and listen to it right then and there. Give yourself some mindset edge heading into the workday, coming home from work. Give you something to think about, maybe something that'll help you integrate these lessons. And that's a great way to support the podcast. It's completely free, but you're also going to get on Mondays my newsletter that goes out on LinkedIn. I also run that through Substack so that you're going to get my long form, I say long form, 600 words or so on leadership. I typically take a leadership lesson from the Stoics. I apply it to police. I apply it to first responders and give you something that you can take into your week that's going to give you some leadership lessons as well. All of that is available for free at the Stoic Responder, thestoicresponder.substack.com. Check it out over there. And let me get into the show. Let me start you off with a quote here. Occupy thyself with few things, says the philosopher, if thou wouldst be tranquil. Now, of course, the title of today's episode is Be Tranquil. I love the number 40. This is more something that my wife, I think, gets and understands maybe more so than I do. But number 40 is very symbolic for religious reasons, right? There's, 40 days of fasting, 40 days of flood, 40 days, Jesus goes into the wilderness for 40 days. All of these things, there's a sort of, I don't want to say mystic, but there's an association with that number that's very biblical. And so much so that my wife, she has a tiny little, one of those little tattoos that women get on her wrist that says the number 41, meaning for her, when she turned 41, she got that tattoo because she wants to look at life as though she is on the other side of some of the trials that she went through. 40 days in the wilderness, 40 days of fasting, 40 days of floods. These are all periods of trials. These are all difficult periods of trials. And when you're on the other side of it, it's day 41, right? That's kind of how she's trying to approach and look at life. I love that symbology, am I saying that right? I love that symbolism, I suppose. And I think it's a great way for her to kind of transition back to the podcast here. It's a great way for her to be tranquil. It's a great way for her to recognize I've been through hard times. I've dealt with adversity. I'm on the other side of that adversity. I have some tranquility. I have occupied my mind with these difficult things, but now I am more tranquil. I am more focused. I am more able to deal with the things I need to deal with. You see, we all have distractions. We all have obligations. We all have temptations that pull us off of the main thing, that pull us in a billion different directions, that can sometimes introduce that adversity to our lives. And from the moment we rise until the moment we go to bed, we're deluged with expectation, with information, with entertainment. And unless we learn to discern between the things that are essential and the things that are trivial and meaningful, things that are essential, the things that are trivial, the things that are meaningful, the things that are superficial, and invest our time and our energy accordingly, we sometimes lose the plot. We sometimes go longer than 40 days in the wilderness. We wander for months on end, not accomplishing anything, full of motion, full of endless numbers of Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays where we ask ourselves, what did I get done? And then we convince ourselves that next week I'll start fresh on Monday. I'll do better next week. That happens when we are constantly distracted. We are constantly getting pulled in different places. We are constantly allowing the outer world, the external, to lead us around by the nose. It creates more adversity, the kind of adversity that we actually have the power to fend off. And how do we do that? By decluttering our minds and our lives. That's how we create space for clarity, for purpose. That's how we create space for serenity. That's how we begin to flourish. Now, this is going to require discipline. It's going to require self-awareness. It's going to require a willingness to embrace simplicity in our thoughts and our actions and our possessions. You see, because in the pursuit of wealth and the pursuit of status and the pursuit of material possessions, oftentimes we sacrifice that peace of mind. We sacrifice that inner tranquility. But when we simplify our lives, when we detach ourselves from the unnecessary distractions, we actually can find greater contentment and fulfillment in the present moment and the things that we have, not the things that we want. So where do we begin? How do we do this? How do we become more tranquil? By remembering what we control. You control your thoughts, you control your actions, you control your reactions. They are yours alone. You control your attitude, you control your effort. Again, those are yours and yours alone. If you want to live a tranquil life, you first have to make sure that what you control is focused on what truly matters. The main thing. You see, in order to be tranquil, as Marcus Aurelius says, we have to occupy ourselves with fewer things. Occupy thyself with fewer things. He says few things, but I'm saying fewer things. We live in a world where we're constantly being pulled in 500 different directions. As I said, from the moment you wake up, we're deluged with advertisements, expectations, information, entertainment, constant input. And it's very easy with all that constant input to be knocked off track, to lose sight of the main thing, to be incapable of completing the main thing. And that is the biggest thing that is causing you a lack of tranquility, that is causing you a lack of peace in your life, is that you are unclear about where you want to be, about the one thing that you should be focused on. You are occupying yourself with too many things. Again, as I started this episode out, it's kind of a mixed messaging a little bit, but this is episode 40. And maybe you find yourself in that moment where this is day 41 for you, where you've been through however long, but let's use that biblical reference, that 40 days of whatever it is, 40 days of being, overweight, of being unhappy with where you are physically, of being unhappy with where you are mentally, of hating your job, of being unsatisfied or unhappy in your relationships. And I want you to think about that. I want you to think about when you're writing your journal prompt, I want you to write this down. What distractions and temptations are creating the disruption to your tranquility? Maybe you're waking up this morning and you're listening to this podcast and you're saying, I could use some tranquility. I want you to think about what you could eliminate in your life. I want you to think about the many that you are occupying yourself with, and I want you to think about the few that are really going to focus you on the main thing. What is the main thing? So write this down. What distractions and temptations are disrupting my tranquility? In other words, what are the many? And how can I bring that down to the few? How can I eliminate the distractions, the obligations, the temptations? Let's start by identifying them. What distractions and temptations are disrupting my tranquility? Folks, there's a few ways to support this podcast if you want to. I mentioned the Substack at the start of the show, but let me mention my book as well. My book is called In Valor, 365 Stoic Meditations for First Responders. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, anywhere you get your books. It is available on Kindle and Nook for instant download if you like to receive information that way. If you prefer the paperback edition, it's available for pre-order on Amazon. It ships on it's not available for pre-order. I'm reading copy right now. It's actually available right now. It shipped on June 18th. Today is, I think we're in August, right? Yeah, I think this is August 1st. But it's available right now, instantly, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, anywhere that you get your books. It's a great resource for law enforcement and first responders who want to practice this philosophy daily. It gives you quotes, contextualization that are directly relatable to your job, as well as daily journal prompts like the one we just introduced and action items that can help you integrate the lessons of Stoic philosophy. If you want to practice this philosophy, and it is a philosophy that is meant to be practiced, pick up a copy of In Valor 365 Stoic Meditation for First Responders. Doing so is definitely something that will support this podcast as well. And finally, like, share, and subscribe this podcast so that others can learn about what we are doing here. And before we go, make sure you check out the show notes. There's some great sponsor discounts from some of our friends in there, including one for a MyZone heart rate monitor from our friend Dan Hickman. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Got one more episode for you this week coming out on Friday. Until next time, you are out of roll.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, like, rate, and share this podcast so that we can spread the benefits of Stoicism to other first responders. It will only take you a few moments, but it can help us tremendously. Until next time, out of roll.